Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Ave Maria. I know many of you come to Days with Mary from far afield, but those who are a bit more local, we do pray for the repose of Soul Paddy Murta, who was parish priest here for many years. He was very kind to me when I was just down the road in New Addington, where I was parish priest for 12 years. And also I know he retired here, and just up the road from here. So he was, obviously, as those who know him, he was buried in Ireland yesterday. So we do pray for the repose of his soul. Eternal rest grant to him, O Lord. Let perpetual light shine upon him. May he rest in peace. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, for the mercy of God, rest in peace. He was a very faithful priest, not just here, but I also knew him when he was in St. Boniface in Tooting. It's very pleasant for me to be here. I actually, as I say, was in New Addington for 12 years, very happy years. Used to help out here with confessions at Christmas and Easter with first Father Merton, of course, then Father Barry Hughes. So great fond memories of coming here to help out Father Barry, and we used to have lunch together and so on. So very pleasant to me, come from Dartford, having just come from a wedding. Typical African wedding, doesn't start on time. Okay, it's about 40 minutes late, making me slightly nervous, but in the end they came on time. And it's very beautiful and so on. And I was just chatting to the Day with Mary team today and just saying, how many Days with Mary are there over the holidays? And they said, we've got one every week, And it's a great example to you and to me that there are no holidays in the spiritual life. Obviously, it is holiday time. I'm sure you know that children are off school. People are going away on holidays. For example, I'm covering for my fellow priest in Dartford this weekend because he's away on a deserved break. So there is a holiday feel to these times, and also the weather as well reminds us that there is a holiday feel to things. But I think it's a great witness the Day with Mary team give us that actually there are no holidays in the spiritual life. We continue to say our prayers, we continue to have the Mass being celebrated and so on. Because there's one person, initially, first of all, because there's one person who doesn't take holidays, and of course we know that is the devil. The devil doesn't take holidays at all. And we go backwards, maybe in the holidays, or some people may do. They find it really difficult to get back to where they were before. But that's the way it is, isn't it? It's not so easy to make progress in spiritual life. Sometimes we're fighting just to stay still, never mind to become holier. The idea we just have a break and so on, just kind of, I'll just have a break and then go back to things. Actually, no, then we take a break, we take steps back, and it's very hard then for people then to get back to where they were before. I have quite a strict First Communion program, for example. So during the First Communion program, which is sort of from October to May, they have children and their parents have to go to Mass every Sunday. And then having had that example of doing that, which maybe they didn't do before, they sort of think, we'll continue trying to do this to June or to July. But then the holiday comes. And they go back to their old ways. Naturally enough, they're on holiday, don't go to church, whatever, and so on. So when they come back in September, they just find it very difficult to get back to this practicing of Mass, which they hadn't done before till the First Communion, so it wasn't completely in their soul, but they were doing it for a year. But then to get back to it when you've had a break from it, it doesn't work like that. You and I know that. Once you have a break in the spiritual life, then actually it's really hard to come back, I don't think, for example, Jesus would have given us the story of the prodigal son today. I really don't. Because in those times, in Jesus' times, it was an issue. If you were a grave sinner in those times, seriously, the Pharisees and Sadducees would not welcome you back no matter what you did. You were a sinner, and you were a sinner for life. And so Jesus makes this point with the prodigal son story, which I'm sure you know, the two sons and so on. One saying, I want to have all my inheritance now instead of waiting until you die, so on. But then he goes off, and he wastes all his money, and then, he feels very hungry, and, he wants to eat what pigs are eating, and he thinks, I can go back home, and actually, I can get my father to treat me like a paid servant. At least I'll get something to eat. Actually, it's a no-brainer for him to do that. You know? And of course, as we know, what is unexpected to them, not to us, and I think to no one in our generation. You know, we get the idea that God is merciful. We all get that. Everybody does. You know? The idea of somebody coming back to God and God giving not a welcome, I think that's gone. Everybody knows that. I would change the story to somebody who's gone away and then they want to come back, but then find it very difficult to do so. You know? Because it's just not like that, is it? It's not like that. We're not like a switch where we suddenly think, oh, I tell you what, I'll come back to God, switch it on. There we are, back to normal. Sunday Mass, Rosary, I'm back in. You and I know that's not how it happens. It's a hard slog coming back. And that's why the summer is so important, and I do congratulate Day with Mary team. They continue with these Days with Mary in August. It's a message being said to us, no holidays in the spiritual life. You know, one, because if we do, then we have to then regain the ground that we've lost later on, and that's hard. And secondly, also, the devil will wipe us out so easily because he doesn't take holidays, you know. So we're in August. It's a great witness. I congratulate Day with Mary team for doing this. And every Saturday in August, there's a Day with Mary, generally in another diocese, in Westminster diocese. I think there's not many in Southwark. But, you know, it's a great witness to us. Day with Mary every weekend in August and September. It's the most marvellous thing. And one of the things I would encourage you today, really, that was slightly an aside, really, but it seems to be a bit of my main talk is sort of saying about, you know, there are no holidays in spiritual life. Well, my main thing I really want you to concentrate on in this talk is the power of the Rosary. Now, I know I'm preaching to converted, so really I'm saying to you, well, look, you know, say the Rosary more often than you do. You know, and I know many of you, maybe you say the Rosary once a day, and you think that's great, and obviously it is. Then my thing to say to you is do it twice, okay? You do it twice a day. It may seem radical to do that, but do it. It is the most powerful prayer going. I had a number of reminders of that actually just this week. You know, it's very easy for me to do Day with Mary talks because during the week things come up which just make, I'm going to use that in my Day with Mary talk. So, for example, I was at a youth conference, something called the Faith Summer Session. Faith movement is a very good movement which I belong to, which promotes the faith in our scientific age. But they had a guest speaker this week, and I'm sure many of you have heard of him, called John Pridmore. And John Pridmore had been a gangster, very violent gangster, but he converted to now being a tremendous evangelist. You can find him on YouTube. Actually, if you do a YouTube search on New Addington Good Shepherd, you'll find him coming up because he gave a mission in New Addington about 12 or 13 years ago. You know, and it's a beautiful talk he gives, about 12 minutes on YouTube at New Addington Good Shepherd. Well, at his talk, which I've heard a few times, and actually John and I we know each other anyway. He spoke about, just as one comment, which just, you know, all his comments are fantastic. He has great stories. But there's one where he says, look, you know, I used to have a gun in my pocket because he was that sort of person, you know, in the old days. But then he took out his rosary and said, but actually, I know that this is much more powerful than any gun and so on. And that is true, you know. The rosary is the most powerful weapon against the devil, you know, and for good, you know. How many aborted babies have not been aborted due to the rosary? How many marriages have been saved due to others saying the rosary or this Day with Mary? How many people have stopped maybe even committing suicide because actually people on this Day with Mary have prayed and their intercession has been effective? How many people have stopped committing mortal sin? How many people have decided to get married, to have that vocation? How many people have gone on to the priesthood or to religious life due to others whom they do not know, praying the rosary like today and being able to give them the grace so they can make these important decisions, you know. Another point John Pridmore made just a few days ago, he says, look, you know, we're called not to lose our nerve, not to wonder, are our prayers being effective? Do they have real power? Do they actually affect other people? You know? And we can sometimes be a bit pessimistic. You know, John actually lives in Ireland, and I actually told him the case of, you know, the fact, well, you live in Ireland, but in Ireland a few years ago, they voted for abortion. How can you be so positive and so on about things when actually, you know, you've had a country which is known for its Catholicism actually voting by 2/3 to kill the unborn child, you know? And his answer was, among other things, was actually, no, we're not to lose our nerve. Our prayers do have the most amazing effects. And he has the grace to see some of them, you know, in his missions and so on, to have, you know, the ability to actually see, no, people's lives are changed because God introduces people to other people or so on, such that lives are actually changed for the vastly better. So, you know, we are called to be aware it is the most amazing weapon. Another story would be, there's a very good, I think it's BBC Two, I think. I'll go for BBC Two, might have been ITV. And it's a video about the friars of the Renewal. I think they are. They're in Bradford anyway. And there was a program called From Bronx to Bradford, basically saying these new people from New York, this marvelous order, Friars of Renewal, Benedict Grochel's order, they're actually in Bradford, you know, dealing with homeless, dealing with the poor and so on, and actually trying to also make a church which was previously not being used to be used. It's a beautiful church, but there's no priest there to look after. They're trying to build this church just to get people to come and go there. But there's a marvellous thing where he spoke about, and actually John Pridmore made the same point as well, where he said, look, in his habit, they wear a rosary, but the rosary is on this side, because this was the side that you took out your sword. And the rosary, he said, is just like that. The rosary is this most amazing weapon, you know, which we use for the power of God, you know. And the other point would be, there's amazing YouTube. If you're into YouTube, you have no excuse then. You do need to see this YouTube clip. It's by a priest called Father Don Calloway. And he's beginning to be a bit famous, because he just is beginning to be a bit famous. And he has the most amazing conversion story. And it's X-rated, yeah? Don't let your children listen to it, because it's just what he got up to as a young person, just seriously. But he converted due to his parents, actually, his stepfather and his mother, converting due to going to Medjugorje, actually. And so he converted because of that, and actually he's now a priest and so on, gives the most amazing talks on Our Lady, and actually gave a most brilliant book as well, Champions of the Rosary, which is, again, an amazingly sort of bestseller. Probably may have it here. But once he said, I'm not going to, there's just so many things in this hour, 10-minute homily he gave on the Rosary, but I'm just going to pick one thing. Because his main theme in that talk was just the devil hates the Rosary. Now, I always knew that, you know, because the devil hates Our Lady and so on. I never knew how much, till he brought out some things about the history of the Rosary. I'll just pick one of them, but I urge you to, you know, if you have the time, look at the YouTube clip and you see all the other times when the devil has tried very hard to stop the Rosary. Really hard, like really hard. And the hardest, the way that he'd said, it's the most amazing thing I've heard, was that in Europe in the 14th century, just after really the Rosary was beginning to take off, so Dominic had the vision of the Rosary and so on, was promoting it and so on, there was something which is called the Black Death, this awful plague that went through Europe and killed 1/3 of Europe. It's the most amazing thing to think 1/3 of the population killed due to this awful plague. You know, it's incredible chaos you would have thought in society when you think, you know, all these 1/3 of people, I mean, it's just, you can't even conceive of it, you know. Imagine 1/3 of you being killed today, or 1/3 in cells, and how that would change the whole thing. Imagine 1/3 of London just suddenly dying in a year or so on. But then he says, well, and that was the devil trying to attack the Rosary, trying to stop the Rosary from being promoted. But he said there was one country that wasn't hurt so hard. I think the English Channel may have something to do with it. And that was England. He said it was England that kept the Rosary alive in those times. And there's evidence of, paintings and so on of the Rosary being used at that time by the faithful and so on, And then once the Black Death died, then the Rosary could come back to Europe and so on. Well, two things. First of all, the Rosary must be really powerful for the devil to cause such a disaster in Europe. But then also for us to see, well, look, okay, England, in the end, when Catholicism isn't the state religion as we all know about the story of Henry VIII and so on. But what a heritage England has, What a heritage England has to be the ones to keep the Rosary going. And while we think of the secular world that we live in, the secular country that we do live in, that actually, abortion is very high in our country and marriage is going through a difficult time and so on. And yet we always have seeds for hope. There's something about England and its relationship to Our Lady which makes us feel, some of us feel that actually, Our Lady will never forget England. And that we have seeds of hope. This idea that Our Lady will do great things in our country. One of the things that we can think of is next year when England is being dedicated to Our Lady, as we offer Our Lady, England in prayers just after the Feast of the Annunciation, being inspired by the team at Walsingham. Our Lady, when Our Lady appeared to Rickelders in the 11th, 12th, 11th century. We now have the home of Nazareth, and also, of course, the Slipper Chapel, which is the Catholic chapel, which, of course, I'm sure many of you have been to. And we think of also Aylesford, just up the road. Just a very short drive. I'd commend you to go to Aylesford. Maybe it's a dim and distant memory you went there, and you kind of think, oh, it's a nice place. I remember going there when I was, in my youth. Or seriously, from here, it's a short drive, isn't it? Just down the M25, M2. I commend you to go. And there we have the most beautiful place of praying to Our Lady, whether it be with a big group or whether you go during the week where it's a bit quieter and it's most beautiful. Or go in the evening, actually. Beautiful to go in the evening, cool of the evening. They have night prayer, I think, sometimes at 8 o'clock, like tonight, and so on, even of confessions on a Saturday night. Beautiful way to end the Saturday. There's something about England which, in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of the anti-Catholic nature of our press and so on, that there is a seed of hope for us. And our seed of hope is based on Our Lady, and also the prayers previous to the Reformation, when England, saved the day. According to Father Don Calloway, it says that England saved the day. While Europe was going through this complete chaos, there was England keeping the Rosary going, so the Rosary then could spread from England to Europe once again. The video goes on to other times when the devil really attacked the Rosary. Classic case would be the French Revolution and so on. Louis Marie de Montfort, his books being hidden away so they could be dug up and found later, years later, and there we have the consecration to Our Lady, and also the totus tuus from Pope John Paul II. Devil attacking, and yet somehow the Rosary survives, continues on strength to strength until the next attack of the devil. Hopefully I've given you some idea that actually we can't have holidays. We can't have holidays in the spiritual life. We must continue to say the Rosary, must continue with our Mass, and continue with our Mass on Sundays and try and go on weekdays. And if we have the opportunity in our holidays to deepen our faith, got a bit more spare time, then, more rosaries, more weekday Mass, more confession. We can think about other things like, being a bit more social, visiting relatives we don't normally see, trying to contact people who are sick and so on, which we maybe have more time to do in the summer. Those are good things. It's good to think about outreach to those who are less well off than ourselves. We have to include that as well. But I would humbly suggest, make it your top priority. That actually, first of all, to keep your faith, keep the spiritual things that you're doing. And secondly, also then, if we can, to deepen our faith. Maybe go to Mass more often if we can. If we are having a break, go to confession and say the Rosary more than once. More than once. You know, I think I'm a day with Mary, so therefore I presume, you know, most of you say the Rosary once every day. Say it twice. Say it twice. And, you know, the devil gives us a clue. By his outrageous actions, he gives us the clue that actually the Rosary is a most amazing, powerful weapon. And we are called to not keep it in our sheath, yeah? Not called to keep it there. You know, we're called to bring it out and use it such that, you know, whenever the next attack is from the devil is, we can be withstood. Of course, it always will be. But we want to be those who are on the winning side, who stay with the Rosary such that through thick and thin, it will continue to be part of our Catholic history. And I do commend David Mary for continuing to encourage me and so many others that in the holidays to keep focused, you know, and to be aware that actually through the Rosary, and especially in the English context, that through the Rosary we can have hope for ourselves, for our families, and indeed for our country. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.